Hey, what's up YouTube? It's Andy here. I run a six-figure Pokemon business, kaizentcg on Instagram, and I collect, grade, flip, vend, and invest in Pokemon. And in this video, I wanted to talk about, distractions and how it can cost you in the long run, right? I don't know if you guys ever watched The Matrix, but the woman in the red dress, shiny new object that's all around us. And in today's market of January 7th, 2025, One Piece is hot as hell, right? It's probably one of the hot topics right now. And the thing is, it's easy to get distracted and kind of chase that thing. And, if you remember that scene, Morpheus is telling Neo, follow me, right? And he asks him, did you hear what I said? And when he sees the woman in the red dress and when he looks up, it's agents, right? And, I'm equating it to distractions, right? And, opportunity costs of just, spreading yourself too thin. And I want to, talk to you guys about some stories about experiences that I went through that, if looking back now, if I didn't get distracted and get, allured by the woman in the red dress, my collection would look a lot different. Probably would have been a lot better, a lot more, but, these are the life lessons that you have to go through in order to, get better. So, first story would be, back in COVID, that's when I was collecting, and the Logan Paul hype. I don't know if you guys remember that. And in 2021, Pokemon was still booming, and I was just getting into investing in modern boxes, Cosmic Eclipse, Unified Minds, Unbroken Bonds, Ultra Prism, and Sword and Shield was around, Darkness Ablaze, Vivid Voltage, and Champion's Path time. There wasn't Altarts just yet, but it was entering that. Battle Styles was going to be that first Altart, and then Chilling and the Evolving Skies. So I remember that time when NFT was the future, right? The crazy digital, digital collectibles and stuff like that, right? And, I fell for the hype. Now, there was a lot of money to be made. I put in, 5 figures into NFTs and NFT projects. And, that money could have been just put into Pokemon Sealed. Right now that I know investing into Pokemon Sealed, like the long-term benefits of that. At that time, I was still a newbie. That was like 1 year in. And, I just didn't have the belief, I would say, as I do now. But NFT was the quick money. It was fun, minting. It was a lot of FOMO, right? Keyword here is FOMO. And it seemed like it was going to be the future, right? But, as you guys know, NFTs, like 99.9% of them are rugs. They're down, they'll never recover, most of them. There was, the Bored Apes, that went crazy, and a bunch of other ones. But, long story short, if I remember I was deep in the NFT run, and I made some money, right? And I also lost a lot of money too. So net, I was up a bit. But the thing is, like, at that time, I remember PSA grading was shut down in 2021. So there was no grading. Vintage was booming, but it was kind of going on the decline a little bit. And modern wasn't cool. People didn't really care about modern. You could get booster boxes here in Canada for like, $120, $130 all day, every day. And the sets were kind of boring, right? Like Sword and Shield, Rebel Clash, Vivid Voltage, Darkness Ablaze. Champion's Path was kind of cool, but it's kind of similar to, Obsidian or Phantasmal Flames right now. It's just, one hit wonder, you get the Zard, and then you're done with it, right? So, NFT was more exciting, right? More opportunity, right? Or so I thought, right? And, you know, some people did really well, and, you know, I did okay. But looking back, you know, at that, I remember the mid of that year, Evolving Skies came out, right? Now, I did buy some Evolving Skies at release, right? Because I was still in Pokemon, but I was like half in, half out. Like, I would still just buy sealed, but I kind of finished my collecting goals in terms of like vintage slabs and stuff like that. And I was chilling, right? I got bored. And, you know, when you get bored, you fill your time with something, right? So, you know, looking back, if I would have just took all that capital and just put it into like Evolving Skies, Chilling Reign, Fusion Strike, right? Where would I be now, right? With the cases going for, you know, 20 grand or whatever the case may be, right? And they were, you know, Evolving Skies came out, it was like a little bit over MSRP, but you could get it for anywhere from $150 to $200 all day, every day, right? We knew the set was like dumb fire. And back then, the Rayquaza VMAX was actually higher than the Moonbreon. Now, how the Moonbreon is now, like, I would have never foresaw that back in the day. Like, I thought the art was cool, but I didn't think it was going to be like, you know, the top modern chase of all time right now, right? So, just looking back at that, you know, opportunity cost, right? I could have, that 5 figures, if I would just put it all into Evolving Skies cases, because cases were, you know, what, $700, $800 Canadian, you know, put 10 grand in that, that's 10 cases of Evolving Skies, right? At 20K right now, you know, just quick math, you know, that's like 200K, right? And liquid too. Where's NFTs now? NFTs is dead. You know what I mean? So with that being said, that was one of the things that I look back on, and I was like, man, that was a mistake. If I just stayed focused when things were boring, because when vintage started going down, like no one was looking at modern, right? So it was getting boring. Those sets previous to Evolving Skies was kind of hurting. Like, I wasn't a big fan of Battle Styles. Tyranitar was cool, but Urshifu's wasn't my thing. Chilling Reign like was cool, but back then you gotta remember Chilling Reign was selling for like $100. Like, they were fire selling it because they reprinted it, and like no one gave a shit about Chilling Reign. Look where Chilling Reign is now. Like, even if I would have bought, you know, put 5 grand into Chilling Reign back then, at like, I remember it being like $600 a case, $600 a case, you know, up large, right? So that's one story. And then, you know, another thing would be recently. So, you know, I learned my lesson. So what one win that I can say, like I guess the benefit of that was like after around 2022, crypto went into a bear market. Pokemon was in a bear market, but I found the joy in Pokemon again because I kind of took a break after Evolving Skies. Like, I was still buying here and there, but not as much. And I came back and I started falling in love with the modern stuff. You know, so I started buying some Sword and Shield because Chilling Reign Fusion was just how good the sets were. It was so cheap, man. $100. Like, if you buy it, anything under MSRP back then was like I think it was like 180 Canadian. So like boxes were 100. You know, you wait a couple years, you could double your money, but you know, in this market, you wait. Well, last year's market, you wait a couple months and it's like double your money. It was insane, right? The growth rate. But you know, even this year, I think FOMO got me on another project and another TCG, right? And that was Magic the Gathering when Final Fantasy came out, right? So I grew up in the 90s, right? And you know, one of my first games was, you know, on the PlayStation 2 was FF7, right? And I played all the way through to the newest ones. I didn't play like 16 and 15 and stuff like that, but I played Final Fantasy Online. I played Final Fantasy 14 online. So, you know, it's, other than Pokemon, Final Fantasy is that other nostalgic brand and game that I associated with, right? And the fact that Magic did such a good set, like with the arts and the playability, and then having serialized and everything like that. So summer, that came out around June. So June of last year, we're, you know, peak bull, but everything was so expensive, right? Everything was so expensive. Sealed was like sky high, all-time highs. You know, graded cards were going up like crazy. Bubble Mew, Giratina, Swordchill Altarts, things like that. IRs were going nuts. And I was like, man, these are too high. I don't want to put my money here. So I kind of got bored with the Pokemon for a bit. I was still vending. Don't get me wrong. I was still vending. I was still selling. But I was kind of losing a bit of interest just because everything was going too crazy for buying purposes. And, you know, when Final Fantasy came out, it's like, man, it reminded me of when I was a kid again, right? The arts were just amazing. And, you know, I started to get back into Magic. When I was a kid, I used to play Magic back in like Mirage and Ice Age era, if you guys know. That's like dating me my age a little bit, but yeah, I used to play tournaments and stuff like that. And then they came out with this format called Commander. It's more casual, it's more fun, and I made some friends, and I bought the Cloud Commander deck, and I built my deck, and I got really deep into it, and it was fun. It was fun. I spent, you know, more than I wanted to. I ripped a handful of those collector boxes, English and Japanese, chasing the serialized Chocobo, right? If you know, you know. And even just the regular Chocobo, and I love the art of Sephiroth, Cloud, Aerith. Like, it was awesome, you know, for a month there, right? And I put in quite a bit of capital into Magic and Final Fantasy. And it seemed like at that time, you know, Magic was doing good. You know, Magic's always been playability and the game piece army and stuff like that. It's not too much about collectability, and people started grading Final Fantasy, right? And the prices were kind of like similar to Pokemon, where it'd be like 2x for the grails and stuff like that. So it looked like, oh, are things changing here? Because if Magic has the collectability side to it, it would be a juggernaut, you know, because it already has the playability side. It's fun. It's if you can get a group of pod together, play Commander, it's actually really fun. And I haven't played it in a while, but I still have my decks. I made like 6 decks, like four of them I think is Final Fantasy theme, and yeah, it gave me back nostalgia, but tying it back to, you know, distractions, right? At that time, you know, there were other opportunities in Pokemon, right? In singles, and just looking at other Sword and Shield plays. Tag teams was going crazy, but there's always opportunities in Pokemon, right? And so I went with my conviction, and I bought a bunch of Final Fantasy collector boxes. I ripped a bunch, and then I bought some to put away, but I also bought, then the whole pre-order thing happened, where it's like, you know, you have to pre-order, and collector boxes, MSRP is like a couple $100, but they're selling for like, you know, was it Spider-Man was selling for like 1,000, and Avatar was selling for 1,000, and I was buying like the Final Fantasy collector boxes. We'll see what happens. It has serialized, it has a cult following, so long term I think it'll do well, just like Lord of the Rings, but who knows. But I tied in, you know, five figures into that, right? And, you know, that could be money that could be put into the Pokemon business for buying to churn, you know, singles or slabs or sealed, right? So that's capital opportunity cost put away. Now we'll see how that plays out in the mid to long term, but I believe in Final Fantasy. But the thing is, you know, I put money in Edges of Eternity, which was a good set, but I don't know, you know, at that time it was like $500 a box. I could have got more Destined Rivals cases, right? Because I remember Destined Rivals at launch was like around, you know, 300 Canadian, which is like 240 USD. And if I would have just took that 5 figures and just pumped it onto Destined Rivals, you know, and that's hindsight, and it's a new set, so I probably wouldn't have done it, but Final Fantasy was a new set, right? And Final Fantasy ran up too, because I did not get it at the pre-order price. I got a few, but I opened it and it was like $1,000 Canadian, and then I bought some from 1,000 to 1,500. So I put those away. But Edges of Eternity, $500, right? And then I didn't buy any Spider-Man, just because I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan. And then to later find out there's no serialized, but I did rip a bunch of Spider-Man collector packs, because they had them at the store here at London Drugs. And so I ripped like 10 or 15 packs. That's like, you know, $1,200 right there. That could have gone back into the Pokemon business. I was chasing the Soul Stone, right? Like all of us are watching, you know, Endgame and stuff like that, right? So I would say that was like not investing, that was just degenning. Sometimes you got to degen a bit. And Magic, if you think Pokemon's degen, look at Magic, man. Like packs go for hundreds of dollars just for one pack, right? So I pre-ordered Avatar, the Airbender, and it also didn't have serialized. The thing with Magic was like, yeah, because things were going so hot. Same with other TCGs, but like Avatar's a good IP, and I thought, you know, it might be the next kind of like Final Fantasy. Like, not to say that it's big as Final Fantasy, but they didn't put serialized cards in them, so I bought it for like $800. Bought 2 Avatar boxes for about $800, and you know, I got cooked. I don't know what it is now, but I think it's lower than that. And that's, you know, opportunity costs that I could have put more stuff into my Pokemon collection of just, you know, inventory, right? And the decks that I spent like, you know, a few $1,000s on Magic decks that I don't even play today, because the thing is, like, you do have to go to kind of your local LGS to have commander nights or get a bunch of people together to have fun. And you know, life gets busy, people get busy. The decks are still there. I don't know what the value is now. It's probably come down a bit, but I still have it. But at the same time, that's money just sitting there that I could have taken that couple thousand and, you know, threw that into more Pokemon, right? And you know, so one thing I would say is like opportunity cost there of chasing the woman in the red dress again, which was Magic, right? And that is lesson learned for me, right? One time was the NFT cripple thing. This time it's the Final Fantasy. They got me with that one, Magic. You got me. My friends were warning me, but you got me there. I still had a great time, and I still think Final Fantasy collector boxes will do well. But you know, going forward, you know, I'm focusing Pokemon strictly, right? Stay focused, man. Because we get human nature, we get bored, and we look for distractions, right? And you know, I am not going to be buying any more Magic, right? Because I don't have that huge conviction into Magic. Like, it's fun, don't get me wrong. I had a blast with it. I'll still play Magic. I still think it's a great game. But compared to Pokemon, I don't play Pokemon, I just collect. Compared to Pokemon, you know, one thing I realized, you know, the liquidity of Pokemon, man, is unmatched. You know, you jump to all these other TCGs and stuff like that, and you realize the liquidity of Pokemon is unreal. You know what I mean? And Magic people is just a different type of breed compared to Pokemon, you know? So, you know, I was trying to sell some Magic. It was a totally different transaction compared to the Pokemon community. I really enjoy the Pokemon community, especially here locally, and I've met so many cool people, and that's why, you know, the lesson learned there is, you know, when you have something good right in front of you, just stay focused, stay in the game, right? So, you know, summer passed and I stopped buying Magic stuff and focusing on Pokemon. So the third part here is, you know, at the end of 2025, go October, November, December, mainly November, December, and going into January here, One Piece is popping off right now. You know, One Piece is moving itself into that third category where that third spot where Yu-Gi-Oh! And other, like Lorcana was trying to hold, and you know, the fact that Bandai's done a good job with like not over printing. They're printing, you know, they're underprinting right now just due to the demand, but previous, like a year ago, they were just, you know, it was cheap, right? And just it reminds me of the peak of the Pokemon market like 6 months ago, where things were just doubling, and these mangas and these rares and SPs, all these things are going nuts. Like, and I'm not a big One Piece guy. I'm not gonna pretend the fact that I know a lot about One Piece. I only got like some exposure to One Piece is watching the Netflix show, and I haven't watched the anime really, other than like some fight scenes I saw on like Twitter and YouTube. But you know, the arts are cool, right? The arts are cool. I get it. People love it. It's more of an adult version, like adult friendly and like look at the waifus compared to like Pokemon, right? Like Pokemon's like a bunch of kids, and then you know you got Nami, Boa. I get it, right? It's more of the adult side of things, and the characters are cool, like Zoro and stuff like that. I get it. But with that being said, you know, there goes the woman in the red dress again, just tempting you, you know. And as she walks by, trying to tempt you to get involved in another project, just because that's where the money is, the hype. People come up to your table asking you about it at the vending shows. You see other vendors, you know, selling off their entire Pokemon collection to get into One Piece when it's already 2, 3, 4, 5, 6x. You know, I told myself, you know, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to chase and FOMO into it, just because my previous experiences, I learned my lesson, you know. And, you know, if it takes off, great. If it sustains itself, great. Pokemon needs competition, right? Competition is good, you know. And the fact that, you know, a lot of this money started piling into One Piece, it made Pokemon affordable again, right? Right now is the time to buy if you believe in the Pokemon market, right? If you think it's going to rebound or you want to be here long term, hey, things are down 20, 30, 40, some stuff 50% from the all-time highs. That means you're not buying at the all-time highs, and you know, there's finite of this stuff, right? And there's still low pop stuff. That's why like vintage is doing really well. Just not enough out there. And then when you add in, you know, companies like GameStop and PSA and all these companies doing mystery bags and power packs and all that stuff, like the low pop vintage 10s and 9s are not as available as you think. They're getting sucked up, right? And they get vaulted because a lot of times if they go to GameStop's power packs, they're likely not going to see the open market again, right? Because people win, they just take their cash, and then they don't really take the card, and the card just goes into a revolving door of prizes for GameStop, and eventually someone will grab it. But the thing is, you know, those low pop cards just become more scarce and scarce, right? And you know, One Piece, like the mangas and stuff, are scarce for the demand right now, are hard to pull, and is low pop compared to other modern Pokemon cards. But I just think that, you know, the hype and the demand of it, I don't know if it can sustain. One Piece just doesn't have the track record. Like, I'm talking about the card game, not the anime, because the anime has been around forever, right? And morning. The card game hasn't stand the test of time, right? It's been around for what, 3 years? So I'm curious to see how that plays out. And the thing is, like, you know, with One Piece, it's and new TCGs, it's like, you know, they don't print a lot of it because there's not demand. But once there's demand, there's always going to be short of supply. So let's see how they handle 2026 now that they have a massive supply. And oh, sorry if it's windy, guys. So with that being said, you know, that's something that I'm fighting with. Like, I'm not gonna get into One Piece, especially some of the mangas are like, red mangas are like $20,000. Like, I know it's liquid, I know there's opportunities, I know there's money to be made, but I'm gonna stay disciplined and focused on the prize, the golden egg, which is Pokemon. It's proven, it's the biggest IP out there, right? $115 billion IP. it doubles the next closest one, which is I think like Disney. Like it's Disney and Star Wars combined. Pokemon's more than that, and I just think, you know, Pokemon's trajectory is just going to continue to grow, and I'm super bullish on it. So with that being said, right, like stay focused on the prize. And some ways to stay focused is just, you know, have your goals, right? Everybody has a budget, and have your goals and have that kind of clearly written down, and, you know, not FOMOing. Not FOMOing is probably the hardest part when you're seeing everybody show off their, you know, their 200% gains on their One Piece, or, you know, $1,000 or 1,000% gains on their NFTs back then. You know, it's really hard, right? But it's knowing that, you know, Pokemon is the safer play. It's proven. It stand the test of time. It almost died back in the 2000, but made it through that point, and now they understand, and they're going to be printing a lot in 2027, 2028 with that new facility that they rented out. But that's good, because we have a way bigger kind of fan base than it ever was, collector base. You know, now that, you know, institutions like are jumping into the space, they need to, you know, feed that demand. Otherwise, things will get too crazy. And I think they'll manage it well, right? With Bandai, I just don't trust them personally, because what they did with Dragon Ball and other games, Digimon and stuff like that. Now they've done a fantastic job, and maybe they learned their lesson with One Piece, right? They got their new golden egg, and maybe they just print enough. And I hope it does well. But for me, 2026, I am not FOMOing into One Piece, because that's not my conviction anyways. I'm just chasing the FOMO, and that is something that I'm not gonna do this year. And so I just wanted to tell you guys, like, those are my kind of experiences with the hobby, and just stay focused with Pokemon, man, whatever it is, and pay attention to the charts, and do your research, most importantly, and find entry points. And, you know, when things are kind of boring and you want to distract yourself, those are the times when there's so much opportunities, because there are so many things in the Pokemon hobby people aren't talking about, right? Japanese promos, Chinese, you know, sealed, slabs. Like, there's so many opportunities that people are not going to talk about, and that's when you got to dive in and get it before the next hype cycle happens. Because once the next hype cycle happens, you know, it's not worth it to chase those gains, right? Even in Pokemon too, unless you're just flipping it really quick. So, you know, in this video, I just wanted to talk about that. You know, the women in the red dresses all around us, guys. Avoid it. Avoid her. Avoid the temptation, you know. Stay focused, head down, keep grinding. And I wish you guys luck on your Pokemon journey, whether you're collecting, vending, flipping, or have a business, right? If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and comment below. And I appreciate everybody watching. And just one question, you know, what was your woman in the red dress? Were you distracted from Pokemon in your journey? Drop it below. I'd love to hear it. And you guys have a fantastic day. Take it easy. Andy out. Peace.